Welcome back to View from Brussels. My name is Brandy Miller, and today in the studio, I'm delighted to welcome member of the European Parliament, Adrián Vázquez Lázara. Adrián, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
As one of the European Parliament's leading voices on innovation and technology, you have been the center at a lot of debates about Europe's digital future. Before we jump into the files that you're associated with, I want to perhaps ask you a bit, how have you seen things changed within the European Parliament since now this is your third mandate?
Well, I believe that the European Union has become more and more a crisis manager. Because in the last decade, or in the last even 15 years, we have non-stop facing really deep challenges and crises. And I think that has helped us to evolve a little bit as an institution and also as an entity that can deliver response to European citizens. When it comes to the change of the last mandate, with the previous mandate to this one, it is true that previous mandate, I think it was an expansion mandate, legislative terms, mainly on the digital world, on the Green Deal, and so on. While this mandate is not that expansionist, but it's trying to be a more concrete and targeted mandate on which sectors and which pieces of legislation we have to address, change, update, and improve. And I think that's the main change I have seen when it comes to the legislative.
And we're speaking about, before we got started, with Omnibus being another buzzword along with competitiveness. And you now just mentioned previously being expansive in regulation and now more targeted. Would you say perhaps it's also a bit of a retractionist on certain regulation?
I think it's the result of pragmatism. Because when it comes to previous mandate, and this was also based not only because of what the public opinion wanted, but because of the main political groups in the chamber that they had majorities.
Okay.
If we take, for instance, the Greens or the Socialists, that they were too pushy on the Green Deal, to use an example. While after those 5 years of that avalanche of legislation, now we see the consequences of going too far-fetched when maybe you cannot go that far-fetched. Because it is true that we have to fight, for instance, climate change, but if you want to do too much in too little time, the consequences of that can erase completely sectors of our economy. And that will affect completely our way of life, our welfare state, and the whole European Union as a whole. And this mandate, we are trying to correct that. That's what I meant when we are doing more targeted pieces of legislation. And the Omnibus packages is taking pieces of legislation that when we did them, they were done because of a good cause. Also maybe a little bit driven by ideology.
Yeah.
Too much, I would say. And now in this mandate that the majorities have shifted a little bit, we are trying to be more pragmatic. The centrist, more pragmatist group like the EPP is the biggest one, so we can actually do the kingmakers to the right or to the left. And we are trying to bring all those pieces of legislation, trigger them down, so we don't jeopardize our competitiveness, our industry, which is basically what keeps the whole welfare state that we enjoy every day, and try to do something more pragmatic, more realistic, while defending our values and our goals. At the same time, we have to defend our companies and the way we actually make a living every day.
Because Europe wants to become a global leader on AI, how do we keep it acting more intentionally about its regulation and leadership versus making the mistake of becoming too ideological?
I think we are the first ones, understanding the dangers of AI. We all know the benefits, and we are set to actually discover most of the benefits in the upcoming year because it's such a growing technology that is breathtaking. But we are the first bloc in the world, or the first country, if you want to use the word country as the European Union, that we understood that we have to develop a regulatory framework to such technology. And we were the first ones, and we are the ones actually updating this. And like it happened with the GDPR, all the other countries will follow because the challenges and the impact this technology and all this digital world is having on our societies may not all be positive. There are some negative issues that we have somehow to correct through legislation. And I'm a liberal. I don't like bureaucracy. I'm one of those guys that I think that we should not put our hands too much in several sectors, but we have to set up some standards, and we have to definitely define a regulatory framework to such a technology. And we are doing that, and we are delivering. And my bet is that in 5-10 years, like it happened with the GDPR or data directives, the other countries will follow.
Yeah, and that is the Brussels effect that is spoken of. So do you see that happening now with Europe and Brussels playing such a key role on AI regulation?
Well, if we wouldn't be playing such a role, I can assure you that the US administration wouldn't be threatening us with tariffs every day. And this is something that if you see the numbers, let's take some data or studies in the US on how young people in the US are relation themselves with imaginary AI bots
Mm-hmm.
or the impact and the hours they're spending in social platforms,
Yes.
then those social problems that we have detected and we're trying to somehow encapsulate through regulation, they're going to have to do the same sooner or later. Because if not, they're going to have a deep social crisis.
And let's pivot a bit back towards the digital omnibus itself, speaking about the context of what happened, because many are observing that it just came into effect, and now we're already speaking about simplification. So, what kind of led to that happening so quickly and the whole buzzword that we're speaking about, omnibus in Brussels? Do you see it as a positive thing?
It was the first time that any AI law was defined, done, and pushed forward.
Mm.
So it makes sense that as it was the first time that we were trying to put this regulatory framework to such a difficult technology, it was not going to be enough. And it was going to get outdated
Very quickly, yes.
And this is something that we have to accept already, that this is not a law that you do now and you can be like the American Constitution, 300 years without change. We have to be updating it constantly. If not, we are not delivering what the citizenship is asking us to.
Do you think going into adopting the AI Act, it was already foreseen then that we need to then move quickly to a digital omnibus?
When we were actually doing it, a previous mandate in the Legal Affairs Committee, which I was the chair when we were doing this piece of legislation, we already knew that while we were doing it, we knew we were going to face in the future challenges that we will have to update. So we are ready for that. We know that we have to do, and I don't think that is a whole change of the legal certainty for companies. I think it's a completely different issue. When it comes to other pieces of legislation, like due diligence and other bureaucratic obligations for companies, that is true that you cannot be updating those kind of laws all the time because it creates legal uncertainty, which is bad for business. But when it comes to AI or the digital world, I think it's something that we're going to have to be updating constantly.
We're speaking earlier about the example of the US being behind in AI regulation, but on the other hand, being more competitive globally. What is the EU able to do, or what should the EU keep in mind in order to remain more competitive itself on the global stage?
When it comes to regulation, it's clear we are at the front. We are the ones defining it, but it's true that when it comes to technology, research, innovation, we are not there. And that is a big challenge. And this is a big challenge that we need more finance, more joint venture between public-private sectors, and at the same time, less bureaucracy and more harmonization when it comes to the internal market. This is why, for instance, the Commission now has launched this 28th regime, helping startups and scale-ups to actually become champions in Europe. At the same time, we know we have the brains and we have the knowledge. In Europe, we produce the most number of doctors and researchers on technology like AI or in green technology, for instance. We are the best in the world. But then when it comes to moving that expertise and knowledge towards monetizing it or private sector, most of them, they're going to the US. So that is where we are working right now. We know that's the problem we have, but at the same time, we are a union of 27 member states that is not fully harmonized when it comes to internal market. And for me, that is the biggest challenge if we want to deliver. And this is very important. We shouldn't take for granted what we have, because if we don't manage to unify that and be one, for instance, to actually prevent this flee of brains that they develop their knowledge somewhere else, we're going to have a huge problem when it comes to competitiveness, and not only AI itself, but to actually manage to keep our system and our way of life as we have it nowadays.
You brought it up with the EU, of course, being of 27 member states, but it's hot in the news right now of expanding as well the membership and enlargement. And just briefly, do you see this problem improving, of coming to a consensus about how to make Europe more competitive and how to be investing in champions, especially if Europe is starting to expand and to acquire new members?
But expanding, if we want to look at it in a more productive way, is increasing your market. Inside and outside. That is always good. The only thing is how we'll manage to absorb newcomers that they have a different income, a different GDP, a different way of how they regulate their democratic institutions, and that's the challenge. But we have done that several times in the last years. So I think that when it comes to enlargement, we're going in the right direction. We learn from the mistakes from the past, and I think that sooner or later we will be bigger, and that for me is being stronger if we manage to absorb those impacts of the newcomers. That I think, again, and this is important, we learn from the mistakes we made in the past. At the same time, we cannot elude the fact that we are losing weight economically in the world. So now the enlargement thing is not only an ideal of a bigger or greater Europe, but it's a necessity. Because our GDP now, it's 15% of the world GDP, while 20 years ago it was 25. So we need to get bigger and stronger to actually keep the whole thing going.
And you see as AI also leading us there.
Well, AI is
a part of it.
It's here and it's not going to leave and it's going to be improving, but now we have to manage how to use it, but at the same time we have to adapt AI to us, to our societies, our values, our way of looking at things, not the other way around, like they're doing in other countries. But again, what I think is going to happen is that the impact it's having sociologically in citizens all around the world, these machines, this new technology, is going to have to be addressed. We are the first one doing it. So maybe now we look like we are jeopardizing the innovation in AI, but on the medium term, I think that we are going to be the ones doing the correct thing.
Well, thanks for at least framing that. I think you bring a really robust perspective, especially for European citizens to be paying attention to see it more as opportunity and less as threat, because often we see that in the headlines as the threat, etc. I want to turn a bit to a topic you've also been working on, which is standard essential patents and Europe's next generation of digital infrastructure. What's really at stake for Europe in the debate over standard essential patents?
We have seen companies, mainly a couple from China, that they have not been playing fair with the standard essential patents, and this is jeopardizing actually our know-how. When you have the patents, you have the know-how, you have the key issue of an invention, of a machine, of a particular piece of a particular industry. And I think that previous mandate, there was an attempt to somehow regulate a little bit more SEPs, but at the same time was a regulation that was not considering the impact this will have in our champions on SEPs. Because we have companies in Europe that they are champions on SEPs, but if we were actually opening completely that market, letting companies from outside coming in with those essential standard essential patents, that will be jeopardizing our inventions, like 5G.
Yes.
So the key thing was, I think I'm a liberal, I'm not a protectionist, but if we are not all playing with the same rules, then we have to protect our champions. And I'm not a protectionist. But it's true if you look to East and a little bit now to West with the super digital technological companies, they're not playing fair. So, of course, open market, of course, WTO rules. But if someone is not playing fair, if someone is subsidizing companies for a state-aligned agenda, then we have to protect ours. And the standard essential patents champions of Europe deserve that protection.
And would you say that many other liberals share the same, I don't want to say protectionist point of view, but it is a bit protectionist or pragmatic point of view?
Well, I must say that the previous mandate, I was in the liberal group. I was in Renew.
Okay.
My party merged into the Spanish CPP and now in DPP. But if you look to the SEP's piece of legislation previous mandate, the most protective vote was the liberal.
I will just perhaps ask one last question before we let you go to your busy day. What would you say is perhaps the biggest illusion Europe is telling itself about remaining competitive in today's world?
The thing is, in Europe, everything goes slow.
Okay.
And I always tell this when people ask me, or companies, or even family and friends ask me, what are we going to do with competitiveness to keep being a big player in the world? And I always tell them, changes always come in Europe when you listen the same thing all the time. And how many times have you been listening competitiveness in the last 2 years?
Quite a lot.
We are just convincing people. In my region, in Galicia, we have a word that is called orvallo. And orvallo means light rain. It's that rain that you go out of home and you see, it's like rain, not gonna get wet. And you end up being completely soaked. So now we are trying to get society and the public opinion soaked on the necessity of tough decisions, trimming down legislation, and understand that the main goal now for our survival and keeping the way we live on our welfare state is competitiveness of our productive sectors. And I think that we are doing that right, and I think we're going to end up delivering.
Well, thank you very much, Adrián, for your insights and also very insightful conversation. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in. See you next time.